In this section, you will hear a conversation between a survey company representative and a person to obtain some information. First, you have half a minute to look at questions 1-5. Now listen and answer questions 1-5.
Hello, I'm calling from the Tally-Ho Survey Company. I'd like to ask you some questions about exercise, if that's okay.
Exercise? That's an interesting topic.
We think so too. I know you might be busy, but this should only take around 4 minutes.
All right, if it's that quick.
Great. First, could you tell me which area of the city you live in? The last person was from Blackburn.
I'm in Box Hill, which is close to Blackburn.
Ah, yes, another eastern suburb. Now, could you please tell me your age range? Are you under 20, 20 to 29, 30, 39, or something else?
I'll be 40 soon, so I'm in the 30 to 39 age group.
Okay, got it. And what is your current occupation? The last caller was a housewife.
I used to be a teacher teaching cookery. Now I'm doing domestic duties, but I hope to start a new job as a cook soon.
Cook, that sounds great. For now, I'll put you down as domestic duties. Lastly, are you married with children or single? The previous person was a single mother.
I'm married, but I don't have any children.
I see. Well, that's all the information I need. Now we can move on to the actual survey questions, if you're ready.
Sure, let's proceed.
Before listening to the rest of the conversation, you have half a minute to look at questions 6-10. Now listen and answer questions 6-10.
Okay, let's start the survey about your exercise habits.
I don't really exercise much at all.
No problem, even if it's just a little, like cleaning the house, that counts. Do you do any cleaning around the home?
My husband does the cleaning, but I do walk to the supermarket and shops a few times a week.
Great, I'll make a note of that. Anything else you do for exercise?
Well, I'm very careful about my diet, and I also do some yoga, though it's more for relaxation than intense exercise.
Both diet and yoga are important. What about any sports or other physical activities, even in the past?
My husband plays basketball, and I sometimes watch him. I used to go hiking in a nearby park, but I've never participated in any sports myself.
Okay, I'll make a note of the hiking. What about any plans for future exercise?
I'd love to try modern dance, but that's probably not realistic. I'm thinking about going swimming at the local pool, though my husband wants us to go jogging instead.
I see. Swimming is probably a better option than jogging if you're not used to it.
You're right. With my new job as a cook, I'm worried I'll be too tired. But if I have the energy, I'd like to try swimming to relieve some stress.
All right, well, that covers everything. Thank you so much for your time and participation in the survey.
That's the end of part 1. You have half a minute to check your answers. In this section, you will listen to the director of a language center library explaining about its facilities to some new students. First, you will have time to look at questions 11-16.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16. Welcome to the Independent Learning Center Library. I'll explain some of the facilities available here. We're at the entrance, next to the desk where you can check out books. However, most of the materials must be used inside the library. Along the middle and in the corner, we have seating areas. On the left, there's a designated quiet reading section for focused studying. The computers used to be in that corner, but we realized it was too quiet, so we moved them to a more central location. The newspaper and magazine section was originally in that corner, but people in the quiet reading area had to walk too far to access it, so we relocated it right next to them. The reference materials like dictionaries and encyclopedias are at the opposite end of the building, as they're not as popular. For listening practice, we have the audio section in the far right corner. It has CD players and headphones, so you can borrow the listening packs and use them there. The main library collection is located a bit further from the newspaper and magazine section, allowing you to browse a wider range of literature. Just follow the signs past the central seating area to find the shelves with the books and listening materials.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have half a minute to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
The Independent Learning Center, ILC, library offers a valuable service called special sessions that I'd like to tell you more about. Many of you need practice speaking English, so we hold a discussion session led by a teacher. This session takes place in the central seating area and used to be from 10:30 to 1:30, but we found the noise was disturbing other library users, so we moved it to a shorter 9 o'clock a.m. to 10:30 a.m. time slot when fewer people are in the center. We also provide support for improving your writing skills. A teacher is available in the quiet reading area from 1:30 to 3 o'clock p.m. to assist with writing. However, we don't have a teacher available in the morning as they are all teaching the discussion sessions. For questions and individual support, a teacher is stationed in the audio section from 12 o'clock p.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. We used to have a teacher available in the late afternoon, but the noise disturbed other library users, so we had to cancel that session. Another activity offered is the language exchange, where local students who want to learn your language will help you practice English. This is done in pairs in the central seating area from 10:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., as the noise level is manageable during that time. After 1:30 p.m., the library becomes quieter for more individual study activities.
That's the end of part 2. You have half a minute to check your answers. In this section, you will hear a conversation. First, you have a minute to look at questions 21-24. Now listen and answer questions 21-24.
Hi, Emily. What did you think about that lesson?
It was a bit hard to follow, but I have some good ways to take notes while listening to lessons that really help me remember the teacher's message later.
Note-taking strategies for lessons? Reviewing the message later? That sounds useful. I must admit, I struggle a bit to understand the main points when I hear a lesson. Look at my notes. All low.
Well, I can see a basic problem right away. You're writing full words, like century when just a C is enough. And don't write increase, just draw an up arrow. And why write thousand when that is enough?
I see. Just using symbols. That's not a bad idea at all.
It's the most basic strategy, which lets you write information faster. Some teachers talk really quickly, so you don't want to waste any time. But you need to know your symbols very well,
Why is that?
because you'll have to look at these notes days, weeks, or even months later when you start writing your essay. So you have to be able to understand them later on.
I think I can do this, even by looking at your notes. IMMED must mean immediately.
But for the lesson overall, I knew the professor would give specific recommendations and compared two different approaches. So I prepared my page in advance, adding the right headings and a table for the two approaches. At the end, I drew a flowchart since the final recommendation would be a step-by-step plan. Then I was ready to just fill in the spaces.
I think I need an example of what you mean.
Before listening to the rest of the conversation, you have half a minute to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
Wow, that's really smart.
Your advice about taking notes sounds great, but I still have one question, Emily. How can you design your page in advance? I mean, how do you know what the talk will be like and which design will work best?
It's quite obvious if you think about it. What's your next lesson on?
Legal studies.
Well, that tells me you'll need a flowchart, since the legal system has a very logical step-by-step approach that has to be followed in order, all the processes that happen in the courtroom and the procedures that must take place for full legality.
Sure, law is very organized and linear, but what about culture studies? That's just a bunch of comparisons between different cultures.
That means you'll need a table where you can efficiently write down the information in a tabular form.
But often the lesson isn't that simple. The teacher includes a really complex mix of ideas.
Then use a spider graph, like a spider's web, with a central idea and all the related thoughts and ideas branching out from it.
I see. I think I understand now. And that would be very quick and efficient. I like that. But what about management theory? How would you approach that?
The same as with culture studies, I'd use a network, which is basically the same as a spider graph, linking thoughts. But this time there are directions involved, which makes it different. The thoughts go one way, not just randomly.
Okay, it has directions. That makes sense. And what about other subjects, like political science? There's no set order to that.
For that, I just write my notes in a straight line, using symbols, of course, to save time.
Okay, that just leaves mass media.
For that, I wouldn't have any special design at all. As you said, sometimes it's impossible to predict how the teacher will present the information. In that case, the best thing is to pre-write general headings, like Main 1, Main 2, Sub 1, 2, and 3, and so on.
Okay,
But I'm always ready to adapt my approach to match the nature of the talk, using any of the other methods if it becomes appropriate.
That's the end of part 3. You have half a minute to check your answers. In this section, you will listen to a lecturer talking about an unusual atomic particle called the neutrino. First, you will have time to look at questions 31 to 35. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 35.
The lecture will discuss a unique atomic particle called the neutrino. Even though the neutrino is constantly emitted from the sun in huge quantities, with billions passing through your body every second, most people are not aware of its existence. These tiny particles are challenging to detect because they are incredibly small and difficult to observe. To detect neutrinos, scientists need to create a completely clean environment, eliminating all other particles and radiation. This requires building specialized clean rooms that have extremely low levels of dust, microbes, and other contaminants. In fact, the air we normally breathe contains millions of particles per cubic meter, while the cleanest rooms have less than 10. Another major challenge is blocking out all background radiation, which comes from the sun, sky, and various electronic devices. The only way to shield against this is to go deep underground, far from the surface. For example, the Sudbury Neutrino Observatory in Canada is located more than 2 kilometers below ground in an old nickel mine, where stray radiation is effectively blocked. Even with a clean, shielded environment, detecting neutrinos still requires a complex, massive detection system. Installing and securing this elaborate apparatus deep underground is an engineering challenge, requiring extensive rock bolting and structural support to ensure safety and stability. In summary, while neutrinos are all around us, their tiny size and the need for exceptional conditions to observe them make them extremely difficult to study. The specialized facilities, deep underground, required for neutrino detection are a testament to the extraordinary efforts of scientists to understand these mysterious subatomic particles.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have half a minute to look at questions 36 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 36 to 40.
While neutrinos are incredibly tiny, nearly massless particles with no electric charge, we can still detect them through specialized equipment. The Sudbury Neutrino Observatory, for example, uses a large spherical container filled with heavy water as its detection system. This inner sphere of heavy water is submerged in a larger vessel of regular water, which helps support the weight and provides additional shielding from any stray radiation. Around the edge of the inner sphere are thousands of highly sensitive electronic detectors that can amplify even the smallest electrical signals. The key to detecting neutrinos is that, despite their elusive nature, there is a tiny chance they will interact with the water molecules as they pass through the sphere. To increase the likelihood of this interaction, the Sudbury detector uses an enormous volume of water, not just 10 or 100 tons, but a massive 1,000 tons. Additionally, the water is specially formulated with heavier molecules to further enhance the chances of a neutrino being absorbed. When a neutrino is absorbed by a water molecule, it causes the molecule to split apart, producing a tiny electrical current that the detectors can measure and analyze. This allows scientists to gather important information about the properties and behavior of these elusive particles. The reason this research is so valuable is that neutrinos can pass through the core of the sun, or even the Earth itself, without being affected. This unique ability allows us to use neutrinos to probe the innermost regions of our solar system and planet in ways that no other form of radiation can. The knowledge gained from studying these mysterious particles has the potential to unlock new scientific insights and applications. That is the end of Part 4. You will now have half a minute to check your answers.